US to curb investment in Chinese AI companies. China restricts public data as more US think tanks probe sensitive topics. Taiwan confirms the news. US plans to provide the island $500 million weapons package. Inhumane conditions of crew members sailing in the Chinese shipping fleet. As US tech luminaries decide to step away from the artificial intelligence, or AI, race, lawmakers are gauging measures to harness Chinese advances in the nascent industry. According to Fox News, the incoming restrictions should target US outbound investment in companies established in adversarial countries like China. Reportedly, it could come out as early as this summer. Concerns exist that the US is allowing itself to be ceded to China, as tech moguls want to refrain from AI development. Leaving the field to China favors its communist political system, and increases the chances that China's AI system becomes the global standard. Fox News reported in April that experts warned that not every other competitor would take risks to society and humanity as seriously. Shyam Sankar, Chief Technology Officer and Executive Vice President of software firm Palantir, said, "China has already said that these generative models must display socialist characteristics." He continued, "It must not enable the overthrow of the state. These sorts of constraints that are being baked in, to the extent that that becomes the standard AI for the world, is highly problematic." The considerations also came as Chinese AI firms have received billions of dollars from overseas investors recently. Speaking with Fox Business, Ngor Lung, a research analyst with the Center for Security and Emerging Technology, or CSET, at Georgetown University, said, "There are concerns around US technology going to the Chinese military to help it modernize, to support Beijing's efforts to leverage technology for human rights violations, or to help China gain a first-mover advantage in AI writ large." A report by CSET analyzed US and global investment in Chinese AI firms from 2015 to 2021. This report found that US investors were involved in 17% of the transactions and 37% of the total amount raised by Chinese AI firms. However, Lung noted that the exact amount of US investment needs to be clarified, and there are gaps in the data. She, however, said that the US would need to work with allies to address potential backfilling problems and share information on transactions of concern. The report discovered that most of the funding coming to those companies came from local or non-US sources, suggesting they could be free from US outbound investment screening. Besides financial investments, CSET said that Chinese companies that received funding from US investors could also benefit from their advice, reputation, and connections, which are not easily quantified by financial metrics. The report suggests that an outbound investment review system should limit the flow of implicit or uncodified knowledge that goes to China through these investment ties. It was no coincidence that the Chinese government recently became very conscious of foreign access to data. As the Wall Street Journal reported on May 7th, sources disclosed that Beijing had been alarmed by a succession of reports by US think tanks which exposed sensitive practices from public data. The reports that stirred up concerns from senior Chinese officials included those that explored its military activities and development. As the sources singled out, some of the reports were those authored by the Center for Security and Emerging Technology at Georgetown University, or CSET, and the Center for a New American Security, or CNAS. They probed topics such as civil-military fusion, which links China's civilian research and commercial sectors with its defense sectors to strengthen its military capabilities. The Silicon Twist policy brief by CSET discussed Chinese military access to advanced chips designed by American companies and manufactured in Taiwan and South Korea. Per a blurb of the article on the center's website, by analyzing thousands of purchasing records, this policy brief offers a detailed look at how China's military comes to access these devices. Then there is a catalog by the Center for Chinese Initiatives to recruit scholars and students for China's strategic agenda, called the Chinese Talent Program Tracker. The catalog received information from Chinese government websites, state media, and Chinese university websites. Some publications by the CNAS have alarmed China's leadership, including a 2019 testimony by a senior fellow at the center to a group congress that revealed China's military was exploring ways to use artificial intelligence to boost its combative power. Concerns from the Chinese government have prompted recent restrictions on databases such as Wind. People with knowledge of the situation said Wind has stopped renewing contracts with the CNAS, as well as the Center for Strategic and International Studies, a Washington-based think tank. Wind has also blocked foreign access to specific datasets, such as those involving corporate registry information. Yet, companies are more vulnerable to regulators without such data, as they lack official clarity on what should be avoided. The Atlantic Council's Geoeconomic Center said in a report with Rhodium Group, "This gives the government ample latitude in determining the companies and activities that would be subject to mandatory disclosure or security reviews."
Taiwan Minister of National Defense Chiu Ko-chung confirmed on May 8th that Taipei and Washington are discussing the Biden administration will use the fast-track authority to deliver a $500 million weapons package to Taiwan. The fast-track authority refers to the Presidential Drawdown Authority, PDA. According to Reuters, the U.S. has used PDAs more than 35 times to supply weapons to Ukraine. Based on the National Defense Authorization Act, NDAA, for fiscal year 2023, the U.S. will provide Taiwan with $1 billion worth of weapons. According to Taiwan News, Taiwan's Ministry of National Defense, MND, issued a press release on May 6th, saying it is optimistic about the success of its plan to use PDA to supply arms to Taiwan. During a meeting of the Legislative Yuan, KMT lawmaker Chiang Chi-chen asked if the Biden administration intends to use the $500 million military aid to Taiwan as its model applied to Ukraine or not. For more than a year, the U.S. has used the PDA to provide free weapon packages to Ukraine. Chiang asked if the U.S. was talking with Taiwan about the model and whether the long-range version of the Patriot missile would be included in the $500 million weapons package supplied to Taiwan. Chiu said Taiwan had discussed a $500 million weapons package with the U.S., but the package did not include the Patriot system. The U.S. will provide existing weapons in its arsenal, and this is compensation for the U.S. delay in delivering the weapons packages ordered by Taiwan. Su Chiu-yun, a research fellow at Taiwan's Institute for National Defense and Security Research, said that with a $500 million package, the U.S. could provide Taiwan with about 3,000 Javelin missiles, 6,000 Stinger missiles, and 500 Harpoon anti-ship missiles. Or the U.S. can supply 120 MIM-104F PAC-3 Patriot missiles. Based on recent U.S. aid to Ukraine with a $500 million package, Su estimates that the U.S. arms package to Taiwan is mainly missiles. The predation by Chinese pirate ships in Western waters continued to raise alarm bells. Illegal fishing and the threat to marine biodiversity posed by the Chinese vessels are of concern, but the problem is much more serious, as it involves slave labor on board. This May 5th, the Associated Press published a follow-up report on indiscriminate fishing by Chinese fishing vessels. In addition, they reported how Chinese ships defy the laws of foreign countries while subjecting workers to deplorable conditions. For example, since 2020, Peru has required foreign ships entering its ports to use a vessel monitoring system. That way, Peruvian authorities know a ship's route and movements more precisely before it enters the port. The Associated Press cited the report by the Peruvian sustainability-oriented fisheries organization, Artisanal. The organization's investigation revealed that only 3 of the 671 Chinese vessels authorized to fish in the Eastern Pacific had installed the equipment. The rest apparently evade Peruvian regulations by floating for long periods on the high seas and, consequently, violate the human rights of crew members day and night, denigrating the workers on board by subjecting them to years of forced labor. Around 16,000 workers are believed to suffer appalling conditions under the command of the Chinese fleet, and among the crew are poor Filipinos and Indonesians. A well-known case is that of the Chinese ship Changtai 802. The well-known case is that in August 2019, this vessel entered the Peruvian port of Chimbote to drop off a crew member with a kidney infection who required emergency care. And that's not all. The Associated Press located the same vessel in July 2021 in the Eastern Pacific. During the encounter, an Indonesian crewman shouted from the stern, "I want to go home." The family members of this worker were worried because they had not heard from their loved one for months. This Chinese vessel fished for another year and finally returned to port in China in August 2022. And as if that wasn't enough, after a brief visit, the vessel returned to South America a month later. There is another account of this horrible situation. In 2020, Inhumane reported the testimony of Alexis Olivares, a Chilean who worked for 2 years on one of these Chinese vessels. However, he was paid only $400 monthly. Olivares practically lived under inhumane working conditions and said that one day, when he tried to escape after a landing, his documents were withheld. He also said, "We worked almost 18 hours a day and had to get up at 4 a.m. Breakfast was a bowl of rice and 2 pieces of fish, and they also drank rice water. When the captain saw a Chinese worker was not working, he would beat him." Considering these data, the ambition of Chinese communism in the seas knows no bounds.